Tonight, another AHK Night Talk, and this time with a rather young face, if I can say that. Damian, Maib, you are the founder and managing director of Genuine. We will talk a little bit more what this company is doing, also maybe why you decided to establish that in China. So a lot of topics, but also a very important topic is that we wrote a report together and we're focusing on e-commerce in China. This is of course a very hot topic, so I'm very excited to challenge you a little bit about this report, what you wrote there. Nevertheless, we start with a little warm-up where I give you 10 questions which you don't know, and you can answer only with yes or no. Are you ready, Damian?
I'll try my best, and thanks for having me, Max.
Biggest pleasure. First question, is China's e-commerce growth sustainable?
Yes.
Will brick and mortar stores be obsolete in 10 years?
No.
Does e-commerce also work for B2B businesses?
Yes.
Is German brands leveraging popular Chinese e-commerce platforms well enough?
No.
Can Western brands be successful in China's e-commerce landscape?
Yes.
I guess with your help.
Yeah.
Is China setting the pace for global e-commerce trends and innovations?
Yes.
Will Chinese e-commerce platforms conquer global markets?
Yes.
Are artificial intelligence generated key opinion leaders better than real ones?
Not yet.
I count that as a no.
No.
Is paper money dead in China?
Yes.
Will artificial intelligence and big data fundamentally transform e-commerce?
Yes.
So you didn't have to doubt on those questions, which means you are quite confident about those. And of course, we will talk also about the one or the other. But before we start, maybe you tell us a little bit about Genuine, what this company is doing, what brought you to this idea to establish this, and that we get a better understanding.
Sure. No problem. Well, again, thank you, Max, for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. And with my company, Genuine, which exists now since 2017, we are supporting and enabling mostly international brands to be successful in China when it comes to e-commerce and when it comes to social media marketing. That means that as a company, we provide all of the necessary services to create your e-commerce shop and to manage your e-commerce shop on a daily basis, to get you the traffic, to do the customer service, to do the operations, do the performance marketing, and everything which is connected to that. And on top of that, we are creating, setting up, and managing the social media accounts for these brands. We do the copywriting, we do the content and the publishing, and we also work with social media influencers, KOLs, like key opinion leaders, KOCs, key opinion customers, and other online celebrities to drive the traffic from social media to e-commerce in order to generate revenue and sales for those brands. So that is the job that we are having with our company Genuine in the e-commerce and social media business.
So most probably to do this, you need some local know-how, right? That's your USP basically, supporting German companies who are not that experienced here in the market in these specific fields. So why did you come to China in the first place?
Well, it's an interesting question. So the first real touch point was around 2007. I grew up in Germany, originally in Cologne. And there was, in one area, there was a big trading house, so to say. And there were a lot of small Chinese businesses in there. And by a coincidence, by chance, I fell in and I've seen all of the traders and the products that they were importing from China to Germany. So that is how it started. And then I started to sell Chinese products to German customers in Germany, offline and then online on eBay. Became an eBay power seller. And when I was curious to learn more about China, because all of the products came from China, it turned out that I realized we can also do it the other way around. Why don't we sell German products? And we started with German products. Why don't we sell them to Chinese customers? Because they're willing to pay for it. And the e-commerce market was rapidly growing at that point in time. So we started with a particularly interesting example, which is baby food, infant nutrition. Back then, that was then in 2013, 2014. So that was the first time I started selling German products to Chinese customers on Taobao. So not even Tmall and the other established platform right now. Tmall and Taobao, they belong together to Alibaba. But back then, Tmall was just in the baby shoes, so to say. So that is how it happened. In the end, it was a big coincidence, and I found my fascination and my passion for China as a country, for Chinese people, and for Chinese culture. And that kept me here, and the business since then has kept on growing.
Damian, I remember well when we were sitting together with a beer and we were discussing the question which I asked you, do German brands actually leverage the potential of e-commerce in China well enough? You answered that clearly with a no, and this was already what you back then answered. So we said, what can we do, we as Chamber and the US are industry expert for that, and we came up with an idea of writing a report giving guidance to German companies how to use this ecosystem. What is the idea behind that, and what can it also deliver to our member companies and German brands in general?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting and valuable idea. Discussion that we had back then. Yeah, turned out that we now towards the end of creating something great, right, with this AHK German Chamber e-commerce report that we do together. So we often, our business, we talk to many German brands, also many other international brands, European brands, American brands, and they have a lot of questions, and the Chinese market seems very overwhelming if you are outside of China, especially now during the last 3 years, when you couldn't easily come to China. You need to do quarantine, or there's no flights, or if there are flights, they're hugely expensive. So a lot of executives and teams, they have now a huge distance between understanding what is happening in China, or their understanding of China, and the China as it is right now. And in your role, the AHK, the German Chamber, and in our role as Genuine, we also want to support these companies being more successful in China compared to the Chinese competition, which is high. So what we want to do in the report together is to give a better feeling, create a structure, create transparency, and make this market a little bit less complex and less overwhelming. We will talk about the e-commerce market size. We will say what platforms exist and what market share do they have, what categories do they focus on, so that brands and companies can decide which one might be relevant for me. And the report is also focused to give high-level executives an overview, so it wouldn't go into too much detail, but as a C-level and as a manager, you would have enough to ask good questions and maybe make decisions upon them. We will also have some recommendations in it for companies based on our first-hand experiences in e-commerce, because we do it every day, and also from interviews that we did together with top-level executives of very large German multinational companies, also of Mittelstand, and also of smaller SME companies, so that everyone finds something which we believe is suitable for them. And that is in the end the real value that I think we will deliver in this report, creating transparency, showing what is relevant, what's today and what's about to come, so that companies are best prepared to tackle their future in China when it comes to e-commerce and a little bit social media.
Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into those topics you've mentioned, like market recommendations, future trends, etc. How does the e-commerce market look like here in China? How is it compared to the e-commerce market in the rest of the world and in Germany? How does it work here? Is it significant? Of course, we know it is, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. So China, compared to many Western markets that we are seeing, and taking Germany maybe as an example, China is a very platform-driven market. So you will not see any company, neither in the B2C or in the B2B sector, which is trying to sell products via their own web shop. So in Germany, that might be common to have your Shopify shop, connecting that with your backends, and then driving traffic from social media, usually Meta, right, Facebook, Instagram, towards the platform or towards your online shop. And it will only be your online shop, www.maxbutek.greatproducts.de.
Great.
Maybe that's a good idea, right?
Absolutely.
So for China, that wouldn't work. So we have the platforms that are trusted by the customers, and they are providing you the ecosystem in order to sell the products. And the biggest platform is Alibaba, with a little bit more than 50% of overall market share. So still being quite dominant, but definitely being attacked by other players. Then we've got JD, the second largest player, and a couple of other players now coming up, sharing kind of the rest. And social commerce is coming more and more. So the biggest difference is that here, e-commerce is happening, I would say, only on platforms. And that is, if you ask me for the biggest difference, that's the number one biggest difference.
Okay, if it only works here on platforms, it means that customers are okay with that, right? Are the customers here different? How do they behave differently than in our home markets?
Yeah, I think customers here, they do totally accept it, yes. So there's a good example that we talk about sometimes. People don't go, so in Germany you would go to Google and say, okay, what do I want? And I ask Google a question. We have also kind of a Chinese Google, which is Baidu. But you wouldn't go to Baidu to look for answers. You just go to Taobao, to the e-commerce platform, or you go to Little Red Book, to the social media platform. And there you ask your questions, you get your recommendations. It doesn't always need to be product recommendations, but in the end, usually it ends up to be a product recommendation in some way. So the customer journey is much more, there's much more to explore. And Chinese customers, they generally tend to be more experimental compared to Western customers, and they want to get to know something new. Something new is exciting, and whoever has the best product for the best offer at that point in time will win the customer. So I would say customer loyalty to brand loyalty might be a little bit lower compared to Western markets, and the willingness to try something new and to be stimulated by brands in terms of content, good pictures, good videos, live streams whatsoever is very high.
Live streams, what does that mean actually? How to engage with these platforms really with interactive format? Is that really necessary, or can we just post photos of our product?
That's exactly what the question you ask, right? Are German companies already, are we doing enough to be attractive to the customers here and not being overtaken by Chinese brands by far? And my answer was no, probably because there are still companies out there which would think that. It's just it's a website. If you look at my German website, we've got my picture, and have a little bit of a description, 5 bullet points. That's it. That's the price. And I have good reviews and buy it. But that doesn't work. That doesn't work in China because the competition is better. And live streams, you can imagine as at QVC, teleshopping in Germany was very popular many years ago, and still it exists. Some people still buy. So live shopping online is like QVC on steroids. It's everywhere, and you need to participate in 2 forms: either as a brand with your own brand live stream, talking only about yourself for, let's say, 4 to 12 hours a day. There are even brands who are having 24-hour-a-day live stream with real people, not even AI, having different shifts. Or you do it with the KOLs, with the key opinion leaders. So I imagine you have a lot of followers, and you do a profile and you say, hey, you're saying every Thursday you're having 20 products that you would be selling. And your followers would know, yes, Max is selecting a good product and he will offer me the very good price. And he's selecting the product, so I believe you. And in that way, there's a huge e-commerce GMV, so huge e-commerce transactions happening in live stream commerce today.
Do international brands or foreign brands even have a chance on these platforms to compete with local companies who might have more resources for marketing, etc.? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I would. It is definitely possible. I think it always depends. It depends on, in the end, your product. Your product must be good. So made in Germany is of course not enough, but there are many German brands with a really fantastic product and also a good ratio between value for money. Especially we Germans. We have, if you go to DM or to Rossmann, we are the country with the best value for money products, I would say. Now where we need to get better at is marketing. And there are many local companies or TP companies like our company, which is exactly offering that service to the brands. So hire either a local team, make it your own, or start with an enabler, and then integrate the teams or have your own in-source program later on. But it's definitely possible as a German brand. And I would say China is your fitness center for the whole world. So you need to bring your attention here, and then maybe from here you can bring it back to Europe in some point in time.
So over the last more than 10 episodes of AHK Night Talks, I always spoke to companies how to tackle the risk, and one method was always localization. That sounds that you are aligned on that you really have to become local while still keeping your brand, but you have to do it locally. Is that what you would agree on?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's, I couldn't agree more. So localization, of course, is key to being successful in the market. Product localization and team localization. And then giving the team in China the necessary trust and the necessary freedom to do things different. Both from a kind of a marketing approach, also in terms of investments, and in terms of maybe even product development in the long run, so that in the end you have a team in China which can run the business by itself.
I mean, we have to differentiate a little bit. There are companies here already, like importing goods, trying to sell their products via e-commerce channels. Then there are also companies who are not here, selling to distributors. And then this is also one important part of our report. There are cross-border e-commerce solutions. What does that mean?
Correct. So we differentiate the market into two parts. One is the domestic e-commerce and one is cross-border e-commerce. And the difference is that for the domestic e-commerce, you would need to have all of the products registered. And depending on what category you're in, that is very costly and takes a long time. There are also product categories where it's rather less complex, and then you can also do domestic, and that wouldn't be a big difference in terms of speed to market. But on the cross-border part, you do not need to do any of these domestic product registrations. You can sell whatever product you have. So the original product with the original packaging and the German label, let's say, or the English label, whatsoever, can be sold via the same online platforms that also sell domestic, can be sold in a cross-border way, which means it's cheaper for you in the beginning, and it's faster. So your speed to market is faster, because for the many international companies, if you have your headquarter in the foreign country, you have your R&D and product development in the foreign country, but you want to bring your great products to the market quickly, and cross-border would give you that chance. Because Tmall, JD, the Chinese TikTok, Pinduoduo, all of these platforms, they do have the domestic arm and the cross-border arm. And for the customer, it doesn't make a big difference where it's coming from.
So would that mean that even you are not in China, you can localize?
To some extent, yes. I think to some extent then localization might stop, but you can run, even if you do not have a Chinese entity, you can still play in China with local competitors on their local marketplaces, with completely local content, with a foreign product. You could even go so far and do your R&D for China in a foreign country and have a totally localized product in the cross-border market. That's also possible, and we see that happening sometimes. So it is happening. But operating the shop and operating the marketing channels would need to be done in China. It doesn't need to be your company. It can be a distribution company, it can be a TP, like an enabler, but that should be done in China. But the ownership of the accounts and the channels, that could be in Germany. And the cash flows could also go to Germany. That's possible. Yeah,
so that's a kind of localization with a local team here, with strong partners here, without even having the risk of asset investments, etc.
Correct.
Right? That sounds quite interesting. Damian, you're working for so many years with German companies, supporting them into the market, and obviously you're observing a lot of German brands or international brands being active on the platforms. What are the biggest mistakes German brands or international brands do, what you noticed in the past and from your experience?
The biggest mistakes would be not realizing how fast China is in many dimensions. Not only how fast the customers are and how fast they require a response. So if you're Chinese, or if I shop online in China, I'm asking a question, and many people ask questions before they buy products, and you would like a reply within 5 or 10 seconds. If it takes half a minute, you're gone. So realizing that speed is very important. So if your local team or your TP is asking you a question, usually via email, and it takes you maybe 2 days to respond, you would, as a German, you would say that's already quite decent speed. Well, for 2 days, you've got to answer. Maybe you answer in 1 week or 2 weeks, right? Because you've got a lot of emails. So not realizing that speed in China will be very fatal. And also not realizing that the content sometimes will need to be different. So you might diverge a little bit from your brand CI. Not too much, but a little bit. So not being too rigid on these kinds of criteria.
It's when I ordered first time something on Tmall, I had a question to the product. It was a little bit complicated, so I found the chat function and I asked a question and I thought, okay, tomorrow I check whether I got a response, and within maybe 30 seconds I got a response and it was very individualized, picking up also like, does that help you to make the purchase? Now, but it's extremely difficult for companies not being here to understand that, isn't it? And how do you explain it to them? How do you make them believe you? Do you have demos, etc.? Do you show them really how it works here?
Yeah, that would be a good one. I think we should maybe develop a demo, right, and do a kind of videos to see how that would work. We don't usually do that, but when brands first approach us, we would show them the ecosystems and we would show them how different it is, depending on their level of knowledge. That's when we would go either into more detail or less detail. But I would say many international brands and many German brands, as they realized the importance of the market already many years ago, and many brands are already here, they do have some basic knowledge and they do know that they need to do things different. So that's quite positive that we see actually most clients we have, they're very willing to change. They're very willing to adapt. And they say, you know what, I know that the market is different, so do it, play like the locals play. That's why they hire you, and that's why they would hire us or other companies like us to run the business for them.
Okay. There is always a lot of discussion, and you mentioned it a couple of times, that you can work with KOLs or key opinion customers, key opinion leaders. Does that really make sense? Because it's quite expensive, right? And one also hears what happens if this KOL did something bad and then it falls out of society, etc. What's your experience there?
Yeah, I think it can be expensive. Yes, for sure. And it will be investments. Some pay off short term and some pay off rather long term for brand building. But in the end, we see that you will not get around it. You will not get around working with KOLs or working with KOCs. And we differentiate between real branding and brand building, where you cannot measure the ROI directly, versus direct sales with ROIs, where the KOLs, you pay them and they will put your product link into their video or into their picture or into your live stream. And then you will have a direct ROI measurement. And sometimes if you do not pay them a fixed fee, you pay them maybe a revenue commission only, then it definitely makes sense for the brands, because you know what you're getting, you know your ROI. So in the end, in today's world, especially in China, but also all over the world, little red book like Instagram or Douyin, the TikTok version, you do not get around working with KOLs and KOCs. Because right now we not only have the traditional e-commerce in terms of Tmall and JD, but on TikTok, there's actually sales generated. So you can only generate these sales if you're working with KOLs and KOCs. Otherwise, you cannot exist there. So there's no way around that. And if you manage your budget carefully, you will have your ROI.
Most of our member companies are actually into B2B. So e-commerce, it doesn't play a role for B2B, isn't it?
No. Good. There's different platforms for different industries, different brands, and we also, being a German company, we also have to do with a couple of B2B players, selling products online that you wouldn't believe are actually selling. Sometimes even on B2C platforms. And that is always the biggest surprise. So customers are buying very typical B2B product on a B2C platform. It happens. But then there's other platforms also from Alibaba, not Tmall, but 1688.com, for example, and other industry verticals, which is particularly for B2B products. It could be anything among the long supply chain that we are seeing, from big machineries, small machineries, cables, other equipment. So there's these platforms for the brands, and we see that German companies are making use of them more and more with success. And either they will do the transaction on the platform if the product allows, or it's very individualized, and there's a very intense communication about what products you need, and it's maybe a big project for several hundreds of million euros and RMBs in that case. So how can you buy it online? But you can attract the customer on these platforms, have a first consultation, bring this lead to your sales team, and then realize that lead and this sale outside of the platform. And that is also allowed, and these platforms, they are facilitating that actively with a different model. So some are getting paid via lead and not via percentage of transaction, because they know that not all of these leads you can convert on the platform. So different towards Tmall and Douyin, you always convert on the platform. So they know it. But the other platforms for B2B, you do not always convert on the platform. Sometimes it's a lead generator.
So, and there's not only AliExpress, etc., where you can do B2B business. There are a couple of other platforms as well, isn't it?
Right. There are many other platforms which we will be going into in more depth also in our nice e-commerce report. One of the biggest and most generalized is from Alibaba. It's called 1688, Yaoliubaoba in Chinese. And another couple of vertical platforms which are interesting, which we will be covering in the report.
Exactly, there's a whole chapter about it. So my question was just to make a show. Of course, I know it's very important also for B2B business. There might be some future trends developing, because the e-commerce platform or platforms and how you process, etc. I think it's how it is today. It's not comparable with how it was 5 years ago. So the innovation happening is going so fast. What do you think? How will it look like in 5 years?
Yeah. So I think what we are seeing right now already is kind of a decreasing dominance of only a handful of players. So I think that this kind of monopoly that Alibaba has had is beginning to be attacked, so to say, by many other platforms, especially the social media channels, which are becoming e-commerce channels. So the traditional e-commerce platforms are being challenged by the newcomers, by social commerce, because it's not new to people to get influenced by people on social media. Buy it on the traditional e-commerce platform, but now the platforms realize, hey, why don't they directly buy in our shop, and our platform, our ecosystem, like TikTok. So within only 3 years, a lot has changed when we look at market share. For some subcategories, these social commerce channels might even already have 30% of market share. So I think this is going to continue, that we see that platforms will have a more equal balance. Not only Tmall, and then there's JD, and then Pinduoduo, and then TikTok, and maybe some other platforms will come as well. Another one could be the use and the implementation and integration of AI, of artificial intelligence. Live streams, for example. Can an AI live stream host be as good as a human? I think they're working on it. And we are working on it, everyone is working on it, and I think soon that will become reality. So you don't need to have someone spending 8 hours a day talking or doing that in shifts. It's also very expensive, have a lot of people in your live stream. So that will be very interesting. AI for content generations, for product detail pages, for customer service, right? I mean, if you ask ChatGPT for an answer, how answers are great. So how can you have this in your e-commerce experience? I think that will come as well. And then potentially maybe also the metaverse, but I think that's maybe a longer journey.
And I mean, our last episode was with Professor Uskoreit, who is who is a scientist in the field of artificial intelligence for 30 years. And his opinion is basically that it's very disruptive. And I asked him the question, which I will ask you now too. If we can handle all these topics via artificial intelligence, where can be the competitive advantages of the companies if everyone can use it?
That's right. I think that's a very good question. And
not an easy one.
Not an easy one. I think speed matters, for sure. Who's adapting fastest to the new technology, and adapting to something new is always challenging. For some people it starts in their mind, and then communicating that and making this kind of transition in the business will be even more difficult. Yeah. So companies who are very fast at implementing these technologies into their business will win. And then the faster the better, because it can really revolutionize a lot of things, even in the whole processes. It can make things much more efficient, and you can offer products for a better price. You're faster, and then you will win the market.
I spoke with an investor actually, and I asked him, should I invest into artificial intelligence companies? And he said it would be better to invest in those companies who can use artificial intelligence, not those who develop artificial intelligence. And that's basically exactly what you just said. The skill of using artificial intelligence might become even more important than having a good marketing strategy, etc. Very, very interesting point. We could talk the whole night about that. Nevertheless, we have those platforms are so big. You have so many data, so many transactions here. Everything in the same language and same cultural ground, under same law, which is very unique. So that will cause high innovation here, which might be exported, or at least be influencing other platforms around the world, as the scalability here is as no one else. What would it mean for German companies if they do not engage here? What it means for China, we know, but what would it mean for their global competitiveness?
Yeah, that's a good point, because said China is is a fitness center for international companies, because the speed is just so fast, and we see it and we hear it from a lot of top managers who are in China, who are always communicating their status or maybe their challenges or progress towards the global levels. And then if you invite the global C-level, they come here after 3 years, they really realize how fast it is. So I think not being here will definitely give you a competitive disadvantage. And you can use these learnings out of that market sometimes as a blueprint for your home market. If we take social commerce as an example, Instagram has tried to do that. TikTok has tried to do it in the UK, but not doing it anymore. But there will be a point in time where live commerce might also be much more relevant in the US and in Europe than it is right now. And if you know how it works from China, you can already transfer some knowledge. And look at Elon Musk. He always tries to get the WeChat of the West. Right now he bought Twitter. Maybe that's the beginning. So not being here, I think will not be good for the successful future of any business.
Yeah, and when Elon Musk bought Twitter, no one really understood it. And now more and more people start to understand what the idea behind that was. And I fully agree, he got this idea from WeChat, or at least from his many trips from China. It will be very interesting to observe that. And it can be also inspiration for our companies who can do the same, basically, right? They can come to China and learn here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we as a German, we're very good at making change happen as well. Yeah. Maybe not every company, but I would say Germany as such, we are good in adapting. You know, we've always been an export nation because our home market is somewhere limited. Yeah. So we always needed to go out fast and early and adapt to new challenges and markets. So I'm quite optimistic that we can remain very competitive.
Last but not least, Damian, why is Genuine and you personally so engaged with the German Chamber of Commerce in China?
A good question, Max, first of all, because you're a great guy.
Easy question to answer, right?
Of course, no, that's an easy question to answer. No, I think the German Chamber of Commerce in China makes a fantastic job of bringing all the relevant and interested, engaging German companies together in one place and create a place where we can exchange about the opportunities in China, how the companies are tackling them, so how we solve problem, and how do we exchange resources in order to benefit from it. Now, the report is now a good example, right, where the AHK is trying to get the state-of-the-art knowledge from its member companies and making it available to everyone for free. Yeah. And I think that's a great idea. I think the AHK is in a very right direction. Fantastic employees on the ground, fantastic facilities. So that's why we love to be a member, and that's why we engage with you so nicely.
Nevertheless, I think a lot of projects still to come, Damian. Thank you very much for taking the time, for sharing your experience tonight with us, and I'm sure that you helped our community quite a lot with that. Thank you very much.